Hey guys, this is Dave with Audio Win, and today we are going to be taking a look at the Myer Audio Cklvx D62, and I think this is the fifth consecutive IEM that I've reviewed on this channel that is competing within this $200 to $300 space, and I still have more on the way. So this $200 bracket just keeps getting more and more crowded, which is a good thing really, because you want the market to keep driving and you want manufacturers to keep pushing each other, because that's part of what fuels innovation, right? On the other hand, it can also be a little confusing trying to navigate or trying to decide what to buy, especially for someone that's just jumping into the market. But that's what reviews are for, right? Or at least hopefully that's the goal, to try and help people get the best value. And that is absolutely the goal of this channel. So as usual, we'll go over what's included in the box, cover the specifications and design, and then we'll get into sound. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get started. So this is everything that comes in the box. We've got the IEMs and cable, of course. We also have a case and then a small selection of ear tips. It's priced at $236, and it has an 8-driver hybrid configuration. And it's interesting because they've opted for 2 dynamic drivers, and then those are combined with 6 balanced armature drivers. And as for the build and design, it is good. The housing is made out of a 3D printed resin, so nothing unusual there, but the faceplate is actually made out of stabilized wood, similar to what we saw with the Pula anvil. And what's cool about that is each faceplate is going to look a little bit different, and these do look really, really nice. Fit and comfort are also good, although the shells are maybe a little on the larger side. They did manage to angle the nozzle and also contour the inside of the shell in such a way as to ensure a fairly comfortable fit. The cable is also good for this price point. It is a 2-pin modular cable, and they've included both a 3.5 and 4.4 option. Just be aware you may have to work with it a little bit to remove it, because it does have a pretty tight fit. But what I like is that they went with the 90-degree angled termination, so it doesn't stick straight out of your amplifier or your DAP. And that is a good thing if you use portable devices a lot, at least in my experience. The case is also pretty nice. It is a semi-hard faux leather case with a soft lining on the inside, and it seems to accommodate the IEMs nicely. It doesn't give you a ton of space, but it is enough space. And while the cable is a little on the thicker side, it is pretty soft, and it is also pretty manageable, which helps to avoid tangling while also making it easy to roll up and store as well. So all in all, in terms of build quality, design, and accessories, I think this is a pretty solid package. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to sound. So the general presentation of the D62 is what I would consider to be neutral bright. So it has some upper, mid, and treble forwardness. And if I'm being honest, it is a little too forward for my preference, but I do think that this is a vocal forward presentation done well. So if you are a vocal lover, then this may work for you. Now, I personally think its presentation, again, it's a little top heavy. I don't know if I would consider it to be super unbalanced necessarily. Again, this is going to be more of a preference thing, and my preference would have been for it to have a little less vocal energy and more bass energy. But let's break things down a little more, and we'll start with the bass. So again, as far as bass quantity, for this having dual dynamic drivers, it's surprisingly relaxed. However, again, since its bass energy still falls within the general parameters of what I would consider to be neutral, I think it should be enough to keep most listeners satisfied. For me personally, I would have liked a little more bass energy. Now, what it does well though is dynamics and texture. And while its impact and punch is maybe a little more on the polite side, it's certainly present. And for those who prefer a more vocal forward presentation, but also want to make sure the bass is adequately represented, this will provide that. They've also approached the bass curve in such a way as to avoid bass bleed. So that means you have a nice controlled and clean transition out of the mid bass into the lower mids, and you're not going to have to worry about things sounding muddy or incoherent in the lower mids. And that clarity carries nicely through the whole mid range. Now, as I said, this is a little more mid-forward than I typically prefer, although as mid-focused tunings go, this is done pretty well in my opinion. And what I mean by that is it retains many of the good qualities one might look for in a vocal forward tuning. Plus, it also avoids some of the issues that you can run into if something is too mid-forward. And what it avoids is shoutiness and unnaturalness. They've managed to transition smoothly enough out of the lower mids into the upper mids as to maintain a nice natural vocal and instrument presentation. And they've also managed to push vocals just far enough forward as to make sure they remain the main focus and maintain a nice strong center image, but without them becoming shouty or being so forward or loud that it makes you want to turn it down. And another thing it does well is it presents vocals, again, naturally, and it gives you very good vocal clarity. Again, plus you get good mid-range detail as well. Now, the treble is also pretty forward. However, it is still controlled. So while cymbal strikes have a lot of energy, they don't really ever sound splashy or harsh. That said, there were certain recordings, or at least parts of songs, where I would find myself maybe wanting to turn it down just a little bit. But again, I never felt like the treble was uncontrolled or pushing into that sibilant territory. It also gave a pretty significant amount of upper treble energy, which is good because that gives you lots of air and shimmer. However, I would have been perfectly happy with maybe a little less. Now, you get some extra detail and micro detail. It's not the best I've heard at this price point, but it is good. Which brings us to technical performance. So I would consider the D62's technical performance to be about average. So the soundstage width is good, but it's not really anything that would stand out, at least for me at this price point. And I would probably say the same thing about its imaging and layering as well. So the positional cues are there, so you can determine where the instruments land from left to right within the sound field. However, it's not super focused. And sometimes things can sound like they're kind of floating within their space as opposed to being really grounded or feeling anchored within their space. And as far as comparisons, of course, my top 5 are the Butterfly, the 5+2, Chopin, Performer 5, and then the Dragonfly. And I will tell you right now, based on my tuning preference, I don't even know if I would place this in my top 8 because there are just so many other IEMs that come a little closer to my preference. The Dynaquattro, Anvil, i3 MK3, and like I've said many times, this $200 to $300 space is extremely competitive And it bears repeating, and I should stress, this is based on my tuning preference. And I also need to stress, I think this is a well done IEM for this price point because it does bring vocals forward, but it does it in a manner as to keep things, again, natural. It also has good clarity, not to mention its bass quality is great. And while the bass might be maybe a little more relaxed or polite, it is pretty refined overall. And it also has good dynamics. Now, as far as whether I would recommend it, if you are a serious vocal lover and you prefer a more mid-centric presentation with very good vocal clarity, then sure. But if you prefer your vocals or your upper mid energy maybe a little more relaxed, and also if you prefer a little more bass energy like me, then I would consider something else like the 5+2 or the Butterfly. And even if you are looking for a more vocal forward or mid-centric tuning similar to the D62, but maybe you want just a little more bass than what the D62 has to offer, plus better technical performance, then you might want to consider the Dragonfly 81T. So that concludes my review of the Myer Audio Cklvx D62. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you like my content, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would please comment on this video, please like this video, please share this video. I hope you guys have an awesome day.